For this project, this is what we are going to be creating. When you download the project files, it's going to give you a variety of different images. We're going to take these images, and again, we're going to create some different masking effects around it, and we're going to place them all into here as a different montage. Additionally, towards the end, we're going to play around with different filters and also how to do some clipping mask and vector mask to create these as well. Here's what the project files will look like. They'll give you a picture of the hot rod and different parts of the hot rod that you can work with, and that's what we'll be creating. I did have a question, a really good question, about resizing images and why it's important to work with a good resolution of an image when you have to make it larger or smaller. What can you really get away with? So I'll open up this one in Photoshop and show you kind of what I mean. If I've got this image and I need to send it to Walmart to be printed, do y'all remember what a good printing resolution was? 300 DPI. If I go to image and see my image size, I can see it's 300 DPI. However, it's a pretty small, as far as inches go, inch-wise type image. So it'll only print off at a, quote, good printing quality at roughly 3 by 2. If I was to change the size of this, however, notice that I've got this locked on. So if I change the size of this one, let's make it 5 by 7 or something as close to it. If I made that 5, now let's make that 7. This time it's 7 by roughly 5. My resolution is going to stay exactly the same. Notice how I can read everything nice, crisp, and clear. If I say OK, it'll give me an image that looks like this. Now it's obviously much, much bigger. Same resolution, but larger image size. So what have I done? Do I have more pixels, less pixels, or the same number of pixels? What do you think? Same resolution, just more area. More pixels. I've just increased the area, and I've told the computer to fill in more pixels with it. So if I zoom in, you can actually see it looks good, but it's got a little bit of a fuzzy edge to it. Not too bad at all. Actually, this is something I could probably get away with because 300 DPI is a good large resolution. I'm going to undo what I did. Let's undo that. What happens if I've got a really small image size? This time, I'm going to change my resolution to 72. 72 is good for a screen, but obviously it's way too small for a print. If I say OK, this is what it looks like. Notice I changed just the resolution. It's still 2 by whatever, 2 by 2. And if I zoom in, notice what it looks like now. Very, very pixelated. Not too good looking at all whatsoever. Let's change the image size now. Image size, still 2 by whatever, still good resolution. Let's bring it back up to 300 DPI. So I'm going to tell the computer to just add more pixels, more resolution to here, and keep it the same size. This is what it would look like. Let's zoom back out. It's still very, very fuzzy. The reason why it's fuzzy, even though all I've done is change the resolution, is because I've taken away pixels. I've told the computer to just get rid of those to make room. And then I've told the computer to add on pixels, to resample it and make up whatever is necessary to make it look good. And this is what the computer would interpolate to come up with. That's why it looks so bad. You've lost pixels and the computer's had to make up something, or the best it could, to add that. So if I stepped backwards, compare that to the original, now I can actually read this really, really well. It's, yeah, from that particular resolution. If you ever change the size of an image, make sure resample usually is turned off. This way, all three, your height, width, and resolution, are exactly the same. If I wanted to make it a larger 5 by 7 or 7 by 5, my resolution is going to automatically adjust to the appropriate number of pixels. In this case, it's going to be too small to print, but it's going to look exactly the same. Did I lose everybody? All cool? Okay, that was just a real quick kind of explanation for this one. Let's have fun. On this particular project, we're going to continue working with different kinds of masking and different kinds of layering for your projects. Remember, Photoshop is a layer-based. Everything you have has to have its own layer, and how those layers interact with one another is how you'll build your project. Now, they'll give you this original image. I'll go to my hot rod image. And the first thing in the book they're going to have you do is to change the size of your image. Now I'm not going or change size of your canvas. Make it a different area that you can work in. I'm not going to go through that. What I want to show you are the vector tools that you can use in Photoshop. Now this sounds contrary to what I've been telling you. Photoshop is still a pixel-based editing, raster-based. But you do have the option to work with vectors and use vector tools in Photoshop. Photoshop is just going to interpret it as pixels. The first thing I can do, I've got my layers palette open. There's another palette that's important to have open. It's called your paths palette. Paths will keep track of all of your vector paths that you create, and so you'll notice this will add on as I start making different vectors. I'll just slide these out of the way. Second, I'm going to turn my background, I'm going to double click it, and I'll say new layer, we'll call it car layer. We'll say OK. Now it's just a regular car layer. I can actually use my move tool and move it around and make edits to this. This will come in handy in a second. Here's where you can find all of your vector tools. Towards the bottom of your tool palette, you've got 4 different sections. First of all, you have your pen tool. The pen tools in Photoshop work very different from the pen tools in Illustrator. If I wanted to make a curved line in Illustrator, what do I usually do? I can click here. What do I hold down to curve that? Option. You don't have that ability in Photoshop. It's a little bit more difficult. If I want to make a curve in Photoshop, I have to just click and drag and make the curve to begin with. And if I wanted to continue on from here, I can choose my Convert Anchor Point tool and go back and change up the curvatures of the angles later, but I can't do it on the fly. So this is the kind of thing that you're going to do it quickly once, and then you may have to go back and do the edits. You do have a free transform pen tool. I'll delete away what I have. This one, you can click and drag around, and it will follow your mouse, and it'll let you quickly create shapes that way as well. This one tends to be the preferred method of drawing in Photoshop. As with Illustrator, you also have your 2 types of selection tools, your black arrow and the white arrow. Remember, the black selects the whole path. Direct selection allows you to do 1 point at a time. Here's the first problem a lot of students run into. You have a black arrow path selection tool, and you also have the black arrow move tool. Both of these are 2 different things. This path selection only works with vector paths that you create. This one works with layers. So if I needed to move a layer, this is what I want to move. This will not move a vector path. This will allow me to move and manipulate my vector path. So pay attention to which tool you have. You do have a type tool, and type is considered a vector object. We'll get into that a little bit later. And then you have your pre-made custom shapes. You've got rectangles, polygons, even some regular custom shapes as well. Whenever you choose these, I'll choose a regular rectangle. Here's the second most important thing to pay attention to, are your tool options at the top. There's 3 different kinds of shapes we can make. If I click here, you can see there's shape, path, and pixels. I'll show you this in a second. Here's your fill color, and you can change it to none, gradients, pick whatever color you want. That all looks familiar from Photoshop, or excuse me, Illustrator. Same way for stroke. Come on. And then you can change the size and the style of the stroke that you want. The second thing is how you want to create a new object. So let's say I've got my rectangle created. I'm going to create just a regular shape. I'm going to click and drag. And when I let go, this is what it looks like. I'll zoom in so we can kind of see it. I've got a white fill. I've got a stroke. We'll make it blue so we can see it. And I can change up the size of the stroke up here as well. If I go to make a new shape, right now I've got a new layer selected. Check out what my layers palette looks like. I made a rectangle, and so it made a new rectangle layer. So if I click and drag again, it's going to make just another layer on top of this one. And so both of those are kind of independent. I'll delete this one away. Back to my original rectangle. If I choose to combine or subtract or any other one, let's choose combine shapes. This time, I'm still working my rectangle. If I click and drag, it doesn't make a new layer, it combines the 2 rectangles on top of each other. And so this is a great way of making compound shapes and paths. Notice that when I deselect the layer, this is what it looks like. Pretty cool? Paying attention to how they interact with each other is the second most important thing. Let's say I chose let's get a ellipse in here. And this one, I'm going to make it subtract away. Click and drag, and now it cuts away from this one. I can actually still see my outlines of each of the individual shapes. If I click off of it, of course it deselects it. So where are these outlines coming in handy? This is where your path comes in. Here's my paths palette. Check out what I have inside of here. These are all of my vector paths, and in this case it's just calling it rectangle shape. I can use my selection tools, path selection tools, to click on any one of these and move it around and actually change it up. If I wanted to change that single point, I can move that. Oh yeah, it'll do that. And it will change up as well on the fly. Pretty cool? So there's that. Select these, and if I wanted to merge them together, I can merge this into one continuous shape. Say, are you sure you want to do that? Yep. Now it's all one shape from there. I'll delete this away. So that's the first thing that we're working with. As you make shapes, pay attention to how you're actually creating them. The second thing is the kind of shape that you're creating. Whether it's a shape, in this case when I click and drag, it'll fill it in with a color and a fill color. I can choose a path. In this case, when I click and drag, actually, tell you what, let me work in normal mode. Oh, come on. I'm going to undo that. Pay attention, there we go. Deselect. Well, okay, we'll just work in normal. Click and drag. This is actually just going to create a vector path that I'm going to work in. It's not going to fill it in with any color. It's not going to fill it in with any type of outline. Notice at the top I don't have those options. But it does make a vector path that I can work with on this side. In this case, it's its own type of vector path. The final type is pixels themselves. And with pixels, I can actually, let's see, make a new layer. And when I click and drag with pixels, it makes a shape, but it only fills it in with whatever my fill color is from here. I don't get the option to change it. I don't even get the option to make a new working path. It's just pixels all by itself on top of here. Does that make sense? All cool? You do have to have its own layer to work with them. Here's what the book is going to allow you to do. Let's get rid of the layers that we have here. Delete those away. Say yes. Okay. Oh, let's get rid of this working path too. We'll say okay. Go away properties. For this, we're going to create an outline of this entire car. To do it, we're going to use our free transform pen tool. And I'm going to turn on magnetic. This is going to allow me to look for the edges of my car. Let's zoom in, Command and the plus sign. By the way, if you didn't know this, Command plus sign, of course, will zoom in. If you hold down your space bar, I get a little hand, and I can click and drag around. It makes it a lot easier to move. Very quickly, I'm going to click once, and because I have magnet turn on, you can see the little magnet next to my icon, hold down my hand, it's going to look for the edges that I'm working with, or the contrast between two edges, and it makes it pretty quick. I'm not even having to hold down my mouse to find where things are. If I do need to add a point, I can just click there, it'll add a point, nice and sharp, and I'm just going quickly along this. I'm going to go very, very quick. Let's speed this up. Going around, making mistakes, going quickly at the same time. Oop, made a mistake, that's okay. All the way up. What I get into a habit of doing is I'll click right where a hard edge is, like right there, there's a corner. I'll go down, click, definitely add a point, and then go back. And when I come back to my original starting point, you can see a little circle will appear, and when I click, it's been completely closed off. Check out my paths that I'm working with. Here's my working path, and I've selected that on my car layer. So what can I do with it? I've got a working path that selects my car, and if I needed to clean it up, so like I made a mistake down here, I can use my little white arrows, direct selection. I can move it in, clean it up a little bit, make it look really, really nice and good. I can actually make a mask to mask out the entire area that I don't have selected. I've got a working path selected, and I've got my car layers selected. Under under Layer, Vector Mask, we're going to use the current path that we have. And this will create the layer that we have there. Now obviously it's the inverse of what we have. Let's see. Strivy's working without a net here. Haha. The reason why it did that, here's the mistake that I made. I didn't pay attention to my own instructions. Let's go back to my pen tool. What mode was I working in? I was working in Subtract. I wasn't making a new layer that was combined from here. Tell you what, for the sake of time, I'm going to do it correctly. Oh, hey, this is a good new fix. Check out what happened here. I went from Subtract layer, see my layer here, how it's got the inside. With it selected, if I went to Combine Shape, hey, it swapped it out. I don't have to redo this. Hey, thank you, Photoshop. Let's try this again. Got my working path, got my car layer. Now let's make a new vector mask out of my current path. Wonderful, that's what I got. It masks it off, and check out what I have on this layer as well. It looks a lot like a regular layer mask, but instead of using pixels, it's actually using my vectors to mask off my area. With this selected and with my tools, I can go back in and actually clean up any areas that I've missed or have to redraw in as well. If I wanted to add on, say, the part for the wheel, let's do this with an ellipse tool. I know there's a wheel in this area. I've got my current path selected. Let's choose the working path that I'm with. And, oh, come on. Oh, there we go. I don't want pixels. I need to choose my path that I'm working on. There we go. We're going to combine this with the shapes that I'm working with. Now when I click and drag, it will actually add on and combine the two layers together. It's not going to make its own new layer. Again, use your direct selection tools to clean up the area and make it go exactly wherever you want to from here. Pretty cool? So that's a vector mask. Works the same as a regular layer mask. The second kind of mask that you can use, and I'll make a new layer, let's get rid of these, are called clipping masks. With these, I'm going to create just some rounded rectangles. These clipping mask is dependent on the layers that you're working on. So in one layer, I'm going to make me a rounded rectangle that looks like this. Oh, not a path. Let's fill it in with pixels. And we'll fill it in with red so we can see it. Click and drag. There's one right there. I'm going to make another one on a different layer. We'll put it right there. And oh, let's make another one. We'll put it on layer 3. Click and drag off to here. Too many palettes open. So I've got 3 different pixels on 3 different layers. Let's add on some of the photos that we're working with. There's inset 1. So if I drag it over here, into there, notice that when I do that, it's giving me my little X's, so I can resize it. We'll hit the check mark. There it is on its own layer. Let's do another one for this one. Let's do inset 2. Place it, scale it up, hit the check mark from here. All I've done is place those pictures inside of Photoshop. Check out my layers that I'm working with. We won't even worry about paths. I've got my picture right here, picture, and then there's the layer. Let's pull the pictures on top of my whole thing. On top of this one. This picture, let's place it on top of layer 3. I'll place it right over here. This picture, inset 2, I want to place it on top of this first one, so we'll see the next one. There's this one. What I want to do is I want picture 3 to be clipped inside of this particular image right here, this rounded rectangle. To do this, notice that I have picture 3 on top of this layer, and I also have picture 3 or inset 1 on top of layer 3. If I choose this image, which is this one right here, go up to Layer and create a clipping mask, watch what happens. It clips inside of that particular image. Check out my layers. This time, my picture has a little arrow pointing down to that particular layer. What's happening is one layer that's on top is being clipped to whatever the layer on the bottom is. In this way, I can change up the size of this layer without actually affecting anything that's on this layer. With layer 3 selected, I can actually go to my transform controls. I can make it bigger or smaller, and I don't have to worry about changing up the size of anything else that's inside of it as well. There are other common things that you can do with this, but for this particular project, that's what it's used for. Let's do the same thing for this first image. Now I've got this picture on top of the red one underneath, and it's on top of this layer here. However, if I go to Image, Layer, and create a clipping mask, notice what's going to happen. It completely disappears. How come it didn't clip to this particular area? It's a clue in my Layers palette. What did it clip to? What layer is it clipping to? 1, 2, or 3? To 3. I can't see it because it's actually all the way over here. Let's turn off Auto Select, and I can drag it. It's actually still clipping to this area. You can have multiple images clipped to the same image, but that's not what I want. So let's undo it. Layer, I'm going to release the clipping mask. This time I'm going to drag it until it's on top of layer 1. Now with it selected, if I choose the clipping mask, it'll clip to whatever layer is automatically below it as well. Pretty cool? Makes sense? That's what you're going to be working with as far as making different kinds of masks. You now know 3 different ways of masking an area. You've got your layer mask that gives you the little black area. You have to paint in the pixels. You've got a vector mask that allows you to change up your vector shapes and objects. And then finally there's the clipping mask that allows you to work in multiple layers and clip multiple layers and mask those out as well. Okay, this is the project we're going to be working on for this week. I'm going to turn it over to y'all, let y'all get started. As usual, if you got any questions, let me know. Okay, still not there. I'll tell you what, bring it over here. Let's see if it's your computer problem or if it's your problem. It works on mine. It's a computer problem. Uh-oh. Aha. Okay, so it's showing up here, but it's not showing up there. Let's eject it. I wonder if, well, come on. Since you got the little slidey thing, if it just wasn't pushed in all the way.
It always takes a while.
Okay. I bet I could pull it out. It wouldn't hurt it. Oh, force eject. Force eject. Force eject. There we go. Let me try something. Y'all don't forget yearbook photos are being taken today and tomorrow. You haven't had your picture taken? last year I had my picture taken after the No Shave November beard auction. Like I grew my beard out and they shaved it just this down here, so I had like 2 mutton chops. And it was like makeup day, so it was the only day I could have my picture taken. So if you look at my picture last year, I've got horrible beard.